All right, now we are looking at lesson 72. This is from chapter 8.5. We are looking at direct, inverse, and joint variation. Okay, here's the setup in the box. If A varies directly as B, then what that means is A equals K times B. K is your constant of proportionality. Basically, what that means is as one goes up, the other also goes up, but it doesn't go up the same amount. But it does go up relative to that K, that constant of proportionality. If A varies inversely as B, then it's going to be A equals K divided by B. As one goes up, the other is going to go down. But again, not by the same amount, but relative to that constant of proportionality. And the third one, A varies jointly with B and C. So A equals K times B and C. So jointly is just multiple directlies. Now, in all cases, notice it is A equals K. It's just if it's directly, it's going to be times B. And if it's inversely, it's going to be divided by B. But the A equals K is going to be there every time as your general setup for these. So, first thing, just to get warmed up, the number of boys varied directly as the number of girls. The implied equation from this would be boys equals K times the number of girls. Next one, price varied inversely as the number. So price varied inversely tells us to divide by the number. Next one, resistance is directly proportional to the length. Z varies jointly, multiple things here. So Z varies, gets me Z equals K, jointly with X, Y, and R. And then they can throw in extra stuff if they wanted to. Y varies, so Y equals K. Inversely tells us to divide, but it's the square of X. So it's going to be X squared. Next one, X varies. So X equals K. Jointly with T and R. Jointly is directly, so times T times R. But inversely with S. Inversely tells us to divide. So divide by S. So X equals KTR divided by S. Now this last one is the only one that seems to be out of order. If you ever see something like here, just simply the variables X and Y vary. Then we start with Y equals K. And it varies directly with X. So Y equals KX. All the rest of them, they're in the order in which you read them. But if it just tells you variables X and Y vary, then we're going to write Y equals K times X. All right. Next part. These are not really the questions, but this is your book kind of likes to just kind of play with it for you to find out. And they write them in a weird way. Tell whether X and Y show direct variation, inverse variation, or neither one of those two things. So if I'm trying to show direct variation, I want it to be Y equals K times X. If it's inverse variation, I want it to be Y equals K divided by X. X, Y equals 7 is not in either one of those forms, but it could be. I don't want xy equals, I just want y equals. So divide both sides by x, and when I do, I get y equals 7 divided by x. Is that in one of those previous forms? Yes, with k being 7. So y equals 7 divided by x. This is inversely related, or simply inverse variation. What about the next one? Well, the key thing with this is that plus sign. There are no plus signs in direct or inverse variation. So this one is a very quick neither. And this next one, if you look at it too fast, you might immediately jump to inverse variation, but inverse variation would be k over your variable, not your variable over the k. So in this case, if we go ahead and multiply both sides by 4, we end up with y equals 4 times x. And now we see it is in the form y equals k times x, which is the direct variation. So again, this is just your book trying to manipulate it and play with it in different forms. Basically just trying to trip you up. Now, as we flip the page, these are the real problems: direct, inverse, and joint variation. These are 4-step problems, 4 steps, but they are 4 very short steps. All right. Number 2, the variables x and y vary directly. Step 1, write the implied equation. So x and y vary directly. My step 1 would simply be y equals k times x. That's step 1. We're done. So I keep reading. Write an equation that relates x and y when x is 4 and y is 10. Step 2, find your k. Find the constant of proportionality, or the constant of variation, depending upon which book you're looking at. So step 2, I'm going to take the y equals 10 and the x equals 4, and I plug those in and I solve for k. So divide both sides by 4, and we get k is 5/2. Step 3, put steps 1 and 2 together. So step 1, it's y equals kx, where now I know k is 5/2. So we get y equals 5/2 x. There's your prediction equation. That was step 3. Okay, that is the prediction equation. That's how the x and y are related. Now that we have that prediction equation, make a prediction. So now let's find y when x is 18. Eighteen divided by 2 is 9. 9 times 5 is 45. All right, so for this particular problem, this question asked 2 things. First, it said write an equation that relates x and y. That would be this. It's not step 1. Step 1 relates x, y, and k. It's the answer from step 3 is the equation that relates x and y. And then that question, once you have your prediction equation, make a prediction. On my tests, I will usually ask you 3 questions. I will also ask you, besides those 2 things, for the constant of proportionality, which would be, what is the k? So usually there are 3 blanks over there on the right side of your test question, and I want all those pieces of information. So again, it is 4 steps, but it's 4 very short steps. And that is basically it. I'm going to do several more examples, just all the different situations, but that is the process. So number 3, the number of revolutions per minute varies inversely as the number of teeth in the gear. If 40 teeth result in 100 RPMs, what would be the RPM if the gear had 30 teeth? Okay, when you see that right there, varies inversely, that already tells you what type of problem it's going to be. So, revolutions per minute, RPMs, vary inversely, tells me to divide, as the number of teeth. Yeah, that kind of ran together. Let me try that again. There we go. There's step 1. Step 2, find your K, the constant of proportionality. They tell us 40 teeth, 100 RPMs. So 100 equals K divided by 40. And now solve for the K. I tend to put that over 1 and cross multiply. You can just multiply both sides by 40. Doesn't matter. Either way, you should end up with K equals 4,000, whichever way you prefer to look at it. Step 3, put steps 1 and 2 together to come up with your prediction equation. So my RPMs equals 4,000 over T. That is the prediction equation. Now that you have a prediction equation, make a prediction. What are the RPMs if we have 30 teeth? So normally I would just leave this as 400 over 3. They changed it to 133 and a third. So don't know if that's what they were thinking when they did this, but it makes me think of the old records when we had as a kid. So I don't know if that's what this implies or not, honestly. Anyway, moving on. Number 4. Strawberries varied. That already tells me S equals jointly as plums and tomatoes. So jointly is multiple directlies. So plums and tomatoes. There's my step 1. If 500 strawberries went with 4 plums and 25 tomatoes. All right. So 500 strawberries, 4 plums, 25 tomatoes, and solve for K. Watch your handwriting. Don't let your 5s and your S's get mixed up. Things like that. Divide both sides by 100, and we find that K is simply 5. Step 3, put your answers from step 1 and 2 together. So now my prediction equation is S equals 5 PT. How many plums would go with 40 strawberries and 2 tomatoes? How many plums would go with 40 strawberries and 2 tomatoes? So I've got 40 strawberries, unknown plums, and 2 tomatoes. So nobody said that whatever was on the left side of the equal sign had to be what you're solving for every time. Okay, that's still, this right here is still our prediction equation. but we're looking for the plums instead. Doesn't matter, just solve for your variable. So 40 equals 10p, divide by 10. So we should have 4 plums. Next. Okay, there we go, too far. Number of girls varied. Girls varied. Inversely tells me to divide as the number of boys and directly as the number of teachers. Now, even though they said directly here at the end, directly still means times that K. So directly as the number of teachers puts that T back up here on top next to the K constant of proportionality. There's step one. There's your prediction equation. Step two, when there were 50 girls, there were 20 teachers and 10 boys. Step two, solve for your K, your constant of proportionality. Do this a couple of different ways. Since 20 divisible by 10 easily, I would just go ahead and just do that. Get 50 equals 2K. Now divide by 2. You could have solved it differently. You should end up with the same answer for K though. Step 3, put your answers from step 1 and 2 together. Girls equals 25 times the number of teachers divided by the number of boys. Now that we have our prediction equation, make a prediction. How many boys were there when there were 10 girls and 100 teachers? 10 girls, 100 teachers. How many boys? Again, multiply both sides by b, put the 10 over 1 and cross multiply. Doesn't really matter how you think of it. You should end up with 10b equals 2,500. Divide by 10. So the boys would be 250. That's a lot of boys to very few girls. But that would be our answer. All right. And then the last one. Personally, I prefer the word problems over these, but we have the variable z varies jointly with x and y. So z varies jointly, means multiple directlies, x and y. There's step one. Step two, given x is 1, y is 2, and z is 7. Solve for your k, your constant of proportionality. In this case, we get k to be 7/2. Write an equation relating x, y, and z. So z equals, we now know k to be 7/2, x, y. That is the answer to that first question. Write an equation relating x, y, and z. Then find z when x is -2 and y is 5. And the 2 on top and the 2 on bottom cancel, leaving just the negative there. 7 times 5 is 35. So we get z equals -35. And that is our answer to the second question. And that is this lesson. varies jointly, directly, and inversely. Um, on the EOC tests, they usually have directly, none of the rest. I honestly don't remember about the SATs, um, but I expect you to be able to do directly as well as inversely, uh, just because. And again, I just honestly don't remember about the SATs. Uh, but it's pretty straightforward, I think. 4 steps, but 4 very short steps. All right, that was lesson 72.